What's up guys, today I'm going to be going over my top 5 Lightfall loadouts, and this is a mostly revolve around weapons, but almost all of them will be tied to a build, and I'll show that off in this video. But these are my 5 loadouts I use for practically everything since Lightfall came out, and easily account for over 99% of my playtime, from patrols all the way to raids. So jumping right into number 5, this will be my Cataclysmic loadout, and even though Linear's got a pretty sizable nerf in Lightfall, this thing still is absolutely really good. And generally I pair it with the Wither Horde or Islagi's Burden, and I pair that with the Unforgiven. And if I'm doing something with champions, the Unforgiven is Overload, but if I need anti-barrier, I use a pulse rifle instead, whichever one you need for champions. Then I also have the ignitions from fusion grenades for Unstop, so I can easily cover any 2 of the 3. And I pair this with these mods right here. Pretty straightforward stuff with my just general well solar build. And overall I use this build a lot for solo lost sectors and nightfalls, and that's mostly for the Wither Horde. Into bait and switch Cataclysmic is still extremely strong, and its main strength is total damage output. And when you're doing master solo lost sectors, whether 6 or sometimes even 7 champions plus the boss fight, that extremely high total damage output and free ammo from 4 times the charm is what really makes this loadout work. And the loadout I'm constantly choosing for those lost sectors, no matter which one they are, whichever planet, I'm always on this. And if I jump into Nightfall, sometimes I do run this one too, depending on which one it is. So even in Lightfall, Cataclysmic is still one of my go-to loadouts. Moving on to number 4, this is going to be my machine gun loadout, either the Circular Logic, the Strand one, or the Ritual Fit, which is a Void one. These are my 2 go-to legendary machine guns. Machine guns right now are so strong for Ackler and single target damage, and generally I use the Strand 1 on Strand builds paired with Unforgiven or a pulse rifle for champions. Now I usually have the Raid Shotgun, Wither Horde, or Islagi's Burden, and that'll be a common theme in this video, picking one of those 3 in my kinetic slot. And I use this loadout for different Strand builds for harder content. For example, the grapple build I uploaded yesterday, and it works really well. And overall machine guns are extremely strong right now. Their DPS isn't that far behind everything in the game besides rockets, and given that they're also extremely good for Ackler, builds like this lend itself to Nightfalls extremely well, where there's gonna be a lot of champions, a lot of higher health targets. So something like Nightfalls, doing the weekly story mission on Legend or Master, stuff like that, where you're gonna be under light and you still want really good Ackler while also having a good damage option. That's where machine guns really shine right now, and they're just really good. Moving on to number 3 is going to be pretty similar to the number 4 spot, but now for Strand primaries, starting with the Immortal or the Raid Shotgun or even the Neomuna SMG, whichever one. Generally with Hatchling paired with, I prefer a fusion rifle, the Royal Executioner or the Iterative Loop with Volt Shot. Both are extremely good, and now that I have a free exotic slot in my heavy, I use Leviathan's Breath, Thunderlord, or even Winter Bite, and all 3 are extremely good picks for damage. Then Leviathan's Breath and Thunderlord will also be good versus champions, and I use this loadout in a lot of the same builds as the previous one, but more so for just general play and not necessarily like the hardest of hardest content in the game. So just chilling in battlegrounds, strikes, gambit, whatever it is. This is generally my go-to weapon loadout. And by no means does that mean it doesn't work in game. You obviously can. I just think a machine gun for your main Ackler is a little bit better. But you can easily still just use Thunderlord with this loadout, which would still offer extremely good Ackler and be overload for champions. And with the Leviathan's Breath, it will be unstoppable and absolutely nuke champions and the bosses. So this loadout definitely still works in Nightfalls. I just wouldn't take it into like a solo lost sector. Moving on to number 2, you know you have to have it, is a rocket loadout. So my God Roll Hothead with Full Prep Clown, usually paired with the Unforgiven or a pulse for champions that have one of the Wither Horde, Islagi's, or the Conditional Finality in my kinetic slot. Generally for the raid, I start off with Islagi's for the Tormentors in the first encounter. I swap to the Raid Shotgun for the second encounter, killing all the majors and like that final like mini boss on each floor. And I generally keep that on the rest of the way. And this is my go-to loadout for any boss fight basically. Rockets are by far the highest DPS in the game with one person on your team using G-Horn, and pairing that with a Wither Horde and obviously fusion grenades on Warlock is easily the best DPS in the game. And this is generally the loadout I use for all of Root Nightmares. The first two encounters, I might swap my rocket to a machine gun just for the Tormentors and the Actor in the second encounter. But then for the first boss and the final boss, I'm just on this the entire way. And the same goes for basically every other raid boss in the game. This is just my go-to loadout. And finally, moving on to the number 1 spot. The loadout that is so strong that, as Dado put it, it's actually boring. The Osteo is one of the best weapons in Destiny 2 right now. This thing just absolutely shreds all content in the game just by itself. But then if you're playing Warlock with Necrotic Grip and now Strand with the Weaver's Trance from Shackle Grenade, I mean, it's borderline cheating. It's so good. And I usually pair that with the Royal Executioner or the Iterative Loop. Then I use a GL or really whatever heavy you want depending on the content. Or even like an Eager Edge Sword, just go fast. Doesn't really matter. The main attraction here is just the Osteo, and if you're on Warlock with Necrotic Grip and the Suspend. And I don't watch Destiny 2 videos, I just saw Dado's video in my recommended one day, and I'm assuming he was talking about this build, and if he was, I mean, he is so right. Just the title alone, this build is so good that's actually boring. I ran this build a lot the first 2 weeks of Lightfall, and I actually stopped using it just because of how boring it is. So that's really a testament to how strong this loadout is, that it makes everything just so easy that you pop your grenade, you kill like 1 or 2 lanes, next thing you know, the entire group is dead, and they're all suspended. So yeah, I mean, if you haven't used this loadout yet on Warlock, you have to. It literally feels like cheating, and if you do use it, I bet after a few days or like a week, you'll probably be so bored and want to find someone else that is worse, just because of the fact that it makes every content just feel like patrol. And I generally pair that with the Envious Assassin Fusion. That way when I pull it out, I usually have my entire reserves in the mag and have multiple reservoir burst shots ready to go. Not like you ever need it, but it's there if you do. Then whatever legendary heavy you want, depending on the content, you can put on a rocket for a boss fight. And it's still easy to run this in a boss fight. You can put on a Cataclysmic for solo lost sectors or even nightfalls. So really it's whatever, right? This build is incredibly flexible, and the Osteo alone is good for practically everything up to a boss fight. Even for champions, when you're under light, let's say you're doing like a master nightfall, just simply shooting a champion with the Osteo will kill them. I mean, the way the poison ticks higher and higher, yeah, I don't know, it's just good. Also, I don't know if I mentioned, this is also built-in overload this season through the artifact. Then once again, if you're playing Strand, you have the Suspend for Unstop. And then technically, if you're using a Void heavy weapon, either machine gun or the GL, if you have volatile rounds from the artifact, once again, that is anti-barrier, so you can easily cover all 3 champions with this build. Anyways, that's gonna be it for the video. Let me know what your top 5 loadouts in Lightfall are. Like usual, thanks for watching. Catch you guys next time.